something pushed me, or I fell, or I tripped, or something. And I was screaming when I fell into the water.
Welcome to another episode of Empowered at Midlife. Happy to have our guest today, and she's Josephine. Josephine is a nutritional therapist. Is that what you call yourself?
Yeah.
She's a functional medicine doctor as well. And please welcome her.
Yay!
Hi, good morning. Just a little bit of clarification. I'm not a functional medicine doctor in the sense that I'm not a medical doctor trained in functional medicine. So
Okay.
I'm a nutritional therapist who practices functional medicine. So a more generic term would just be a
Right.
functional medicine practitioner.
I see. Okay.
So
All right.
there's sometimes a bit confusion because in the US, they're mainly medical doctors who have moved over into functional medicine. So they are able to call themselves functional medicine doctors. Where,
I
in
see.
context, we're a little bit careful because we're not medical doctors. So strangely, I guess you could say when I switched over from my previous career. So I used to be a journalist. A long time ago, I started off with being a newspaper journalist at the SPH Group, Straits Times, Sunday Times, Live, and all that new paper. I was there, did it all. So,
I didn't know
and I
that.
continued my journalism. Yes. Then I became a financial journalist with Dow Jones and then with Reuters News Agency. So when I was in Reuters, I got posted to London. So by the time I got to London, I was already close. I can't remember, probably in my 30s. I might have had a midlife crisis then. In the sense that, that was when I started studying nutritional therapy while I was working full time. Then when I finished studying, by the time I finished studying, I think I was 41, 42. So, or probably about 42 because I've been in practice for 20 years. I'm already 62. So I guess at that point when I made a big switch, you can see I made a lot of switches in my career, but I made a huge switch from journalism into something really quite alternative for something that was 20 years ago in the UK. When I lived in the UK, it was functional medicine based. So I guess if I think back, that could have been a form of midlife crisis because, you always thought about midlife crisis as the point in your life when you start to question your purpose, what is meaning of life, are you doing anything meaningful? At that time, that was what I was questioning. Like every day, I was a financial editor. I was doing mergers and acquisitions, editing stories for international mergers and acquisition. And then you come home and you can't remember what you've done. And I guess it's midlife crisis because you start to wonder what I can't remember what I've done. What does it mean? Have I really made any difference in the world or even made any difference to my own personal life? And that was when I started thinking about, I started getting itchy and looking around to doing something else. When I was looking for something else to do, being Singaporean, I think Shamala can relate to it. Definitely, we are very academic driven, well, at least in my generation, and I'm a very A personality type. So my first route of looking for something else was thinking about, should I do another degree? Should I do a master's, a business, MBA? And then I was thinking, what the hell? Sorry for the language. What difference would that make? And then I started again doing stuff that was more analytical, brain-based. I was thinking of, after about, I think I must have, searched, and dabbled in all these things for about a year or maybe close to 2 years. And one day it suddenly dawned on me, because when I moved into the UK, my health wasn't very good. I had kind of a mystery ailments and I landed up in hospital, and I had scope done, the specialists to know what was going on. When I was in the UK, you had to fend for yourself, no family to feed you. That was when I started to learn how to cook by, would you believe it, watching TV programs. Julia Smith, Jamie Oliver, all that, taught myself to cook. And then I got to reading, at that time, 20 years ago, I think the UK was quite advanced in nutrition because just by reading the newspapers, magazines, there was a lot on nutrition. There were people giving advice, talking, about nutrition. And I used to follow these people called the Food Doctor. I'm a big fan of theirs. And I implemented changes in my diet. And after a while, I noticed all my symptoms went away. So when the penny dropped for me when I was trying to search for meaning in life, in my midlife, after thinking about doing MBA, doing all these computing things, and still not it, suddenly one day when I was at work at Reuters, the penny dropped and was thinking, hey, I really enjoyed this and it's become part of my life. Maybe this is the route I should be exploring. So I went to contact the food doctor. There was a pair of them, a lady and a guy. The lady was really sweet. She actually replied to me. She gave me some advice. So anyway, not to go into a long story, that's how I went on to the route to study nutritional therapy. So I studied and I worked full-time and studied, which ironically caused quite a big burnout because you had to study and work full time at the same time. After 3-4 years of that, I was close to burnout. And then you come to a real crossroad. What do you do? Right? So before I graduated, I thought deep and hard and questioned myself whether I had the courage to give everything up. Right? I was living a very comfortable life. I was relatively well paid at Reuters, to give that all up for the unknown. Then if you believe that if you're doing what you meant to do, universe has a way of telling or directing you. So two major things happen. I had a very vivid dream. I don't know, both of you might be well versed with this poem that where you are brought to the edge of your cliff and you are told come to the edge, and it tests whether you are brave enough to take the leap. Maybe the universe doesn't want me to talk.
I don't think so.
Maybe I'm going to say too contentious. My father wanted me to be a medical doctor, and I rebelled. At that point, I didn't want to be a medical doctor, and I just did something in the sciences just to kind of bridge the gap, because my father never believed if you did the arts, which was what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to be a writer.
It's hard, isn't it? Like when you're trying to fill, your parents' wishes, and you're stuck between a rock and a hard place because it's something, you want to do something completely different. And our parents have always got the best interest for us, but when you're so passionate about trying to do something else, and what you did, I think, was a really good compromise.
Which maybe if I had done medicine, I would be a functional medicine doctor, right? And actually that would have made some things easier the last 20 years doing what I've been doing. Yeah.
And you never know what's around the corner as well, because obviously with all, your qualifications and your knowledge that you have now, you can write about it.
Yeah. Actually, in my third quarter life turning point, one of the things I'm thinking of doing is writing a book. But I've thought about it, every now and then over the years, but I just haven't had the time to, I think, totally switch off and reflect enough. I was thinking, write a book, but what about, everything you want to write about has been written about. Like, what else is there to say? It's like, yeah, maybe I will, but I think I need to reflect deeply if I really want to go, if I really want to go that route. Am I going to write about health? Am I going to write about life in general? And who am I writing for?
I wrote a book and I didn't know what I was going to write about. I was in a big group that were ready to write a book, and I had no idea what I was going to write about. And everyone thought I was going to write about health and fitness because that's my industry. And I thought, that's the last thing I want to do, because like you said, there's every book out there, and who am I to say, what I write about, is going to be of any interest at all whatsoever. And then the title actually came to me first. It was like an apple falling from the tree hit me on the head. And then I kind of went from there. And it was actually what to do with about mindset. As I started to get into it and started to expand. I just started, and it kind of went from there. But yeah, it's definitely the hardest part is overthinking at the start, as in where to start. But then when you just let it go and release, you'll find that a lot will come to you anyway.
That's good advice. Yeah, I like the thing that the title dropped in first. So sometimes that is what focuses you. You have
Yeah,
a title, and that's a core. If you can encapsulate the core message or the purpose of the book in the title, there you go. I like
definitely.
that.
Yeah,
Maybe
and
it
mine was
happens.
all to do with mindset and challenges and life challenges, and I use my life and situations as an example. But it is all, there's a lot of health and fitness related in there, but there's life related. There's lots of different things. I touch on just about every subject so far, but it's all to do with the mindset. And the title is When Life Gives You Lemons, Squeeze Them Harder, and it's the art of turning
Yes.
struggles into strengths. And so I had that part, like that came to me straight away, and I went, oh, mindset, because a lot of it I learned from all my sporting background, but also life just in general. Believing in what you've got to say is of importance anyway, because the right audience will find you.
So I had these two things. I had this vivid dream. Where I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and I was told something said for me to go to the edge of the cliff, and I was really terrified. But they said, "No, come to the edge." This voice said, "Come to the edge." So I went to the edge of the cliff, and I looked down, and I saw this holy man at the bottom, like there was water. Either he was afloat or he was sitting something, and he was beckoning to me. It's like, jump, jump, jump. And I said, no, no, I
Oh,
can't do it. I can't do it. I said, I'm going to drown. And he said, no, don't worry. You just jump. When you get in the water, you'll be fine. And I said, no, no, I can't. And something pushed me, or I fell, or I tripped, or something. And I was screaming when I fell into the water. And then when I went into the water, I just surfaced and I came up, and everything was all right. And then I woke up.
oh,
And soon after that, I was in the bookstore browsing, and this book fell off the bookshelf. Literally, it fell off the bookshelf,
gosh, yeah.
picked it up, and I was browsing. So just before, in the introduction of the book, right at the end, there's this poem. It says, "Come to the edge," he said. "We can't, master, we're scared." "Come to the edge," he said. "We can't, master," we said. "Come to the edge," he said. They came. He pushed them. They flew. And my jaw dropped, and I dropped the book. Okay.
I bet. I mean, if that wasn't a sign, what was it?
Yeah, and then it says, freedom, freedom is our destiny, yet we fear taking the very step which will carry us into the greatness which is our own true nature. My jaw really dropped. And so at that point, I said, oh, okay, I did not even ask for a sign. I was just thinking, am I brave enough to? So this was one of the pivotal moments in my life. Yeah.
Definitely. So
Yeah.
was that enough sign then for you to change the direction and then start to follow a different path?
Yeah, so I think that gave me and then the other sign was, so I kind of decided I would give up, I would give it up. So I was going to quit. I was thinking, okay, what's the timing? What's the timing of it, right? Do I quit as soon as I graduated, or do I wait a little while, try and save the money? So I knew I was going to do it, but it was the timing. So the second pivotal point came when Reuters had a redundancy scheme. And I wasn't affected. One of my colleagues who was in his 60s was affected. So they made him redundant. But it turned out that he did not want to go. And he told everyone, he wasn't quiet, but he knew he didn't want to go. So the company told him, well, if you can find another job within the organization that you could fill in, then you could stay. Otherwise, your role, your current job is redundant. And he did the same job as I did. At the time, my husband was my boyfriend. So I had a conversation, and then I said, I have an idea. what about I go to the company and I propose? We had unions then in the UK. Said, what if I went to the union and asked, could they broker a deal for me? Could I take his redundancy and he takes my job? Because we did the exact same job. It was the exact same job.
Yeah.
Boyfriend at the time. So yeah, agreed me. So I went to seek out the union rep and suggested this. Then he said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me try. So he spoke to the guy and he was all for it. Then they went to the HR, and 2 weeks later he came back to me. He said, we could do the deal. So, so he asked for another side. So I got redundancy, I got paid out, I got a year's salary, which then I thought, hell, that's my seed money.
Yeah.
Like, right. So that was my second sign that confirmed everything.
Yeah. Gosh.
So I took that, and then off I went. So I gave it up. But I must say that the first few years was incredibly difficult still, even though I had the two sons, and I had a year's salary. But being the A personality type and growing up in Singapore, I was very hard on myself. I'm sure you run your own business. They always tell you that you should give yourself 3 years. You don't expect to break even
Yeah.
and until the third year. But I was very hard on myself. I expected to make money in the first year I was in, and then I beat myself. I like, oh, where was my client? I was all stressed out. I was crying. I was stressing myself out and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, that was 20 years ago.
Because obviously the first two, like you couldn't have got any stronger signs, of
Yeah.
changing your course of direction. So, not only did it show you, but also, that it reaffirmed to have that courage, to take that leap, and that, any sort of financial, stresses and worries were going to be provided for. I mean, that's an amazing story.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, I was crazy why I beat myself up. Okay, I didn't make enough to like pay myself a salary or anything, but I didn't lose money either. I
Great.
covered all my costs and I could carry on. And then from the second year, third year, I was still very hard, right? You don't earn the kind of money like you were paid salary. You didn't have insurance and all that sort of stuff. But I made it through, and I loved what I was doing. And now 20 years later, now I've come to my third quarter uh, um, turning point. I'm trying to decide when I'm going to retire now. And then what I'm going to do. So, yeah.
Do you have to retire? That's the question. Do you want to
Well,
retire?
that's the identity thing I was talking to Shamala about when we had a little chit chat. And what does retirement mean?
Yeah.
And I said that we always talk about meaning of life in mid-year crisis. A lot of people change our careers, but when you come to so-called closer to your third quarter life, well, I guess if you're in a normal job, like if you're employed, you will be forced to make a decision when to retire, right? Because you can't be employed forever up to a certain point. But if you're self-employed, I guess you could carry on until you can't carry on, like depending on what kind, if your job uses a brain power until your brain is not working so well and you can't you can't provide the kind of service the level that you wanted to, then you may be tired. But for me, it's more about, I've reached a point where I'm actually quite fatigued by what I'm doing, because the nature of what I'm doing over the years has changed. And because I work with very um, complex and chronic health issues, very complex patients. But I've come to the point where I don't have to work full time, so I transitioned to working part time over the last several years, and by choice, so that I can have me time. But
Is it time for change again?
sobering when I actually sit down and think that I've actually done this for 20 years. So I'm actually, I can claim to be the oldest functional medicine practitioner, at least in Singapore, in terms of the number of years that I've done this,
Yeah.
and maybe one of the earliest in the UK, because functional medicine came from the US and went into the UK. So probably one of the oldest in the UK. So yes, so thinking about now, it's like kind of a third quarter life crossroads. So my conversation with you was about, so what do you do? So some people retire when they give up their jobs, and I remember we were talking about I noticed how sad some people when they give up their employed position and they did not think about what retirement means, and they end up sitting at home, not knowing what to do. They think that they're just going to stay at home and enjoy, and sometimes they get bored and they stay at home for too long. They
Yeah.
hate their spouses, and sometimes when they suddenly lost the reason for getting up, even if it's just going into the office, and you've heard stories about this, then they
Yeah.
die very soon after they retire. They think they're
Yeah.
going to enjoy the retirement years,
Yeah.
but they die soon after
They
because,
become really depressed.
yeah,
They become so depressed, they lost their sense of purpose. And I think that's where also a lot of marriages break down
yes,
when one or both partners retire, right? And then
yes,
there's so much chaos in the marriage, in the family, because there's no compass, right? They don't know where to go.
yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
yeah.
no direction.
Yes, there's no
Yeah.
direction. So,
Yeah.
so what I've been wondering about, like, okay, the reason why I've come to this so-called crossroad is that mentally and physically, I guess partly is because my age, right? It's 62. You can't don't expect my endurance and all that to be the same as when I'm in my 30s and even 20 years ago. So mentally and physically, I do feel a little bit tired. But when I'm
Mm.
in the consultation with a client and I come out and my consultations are very long. The first consultation is like 2 hours. Sometimes it runs into 3 hours. And I come out, I feel very energized. Then it delays my decision because I feel, oh gosh, if I can help one more person, right?
Mm.
I'm going to
Mm.
stay in there. I would feel like 2 days, 3 days of it. By the end of the day, in the evening, I'm really tired. It does take a toll. So I've been reflecting on it. That's why it made me think about, how do people approach retirement when you come into this third quarter life. And for me, it's about, we talk a lot about, it's another scary point because 20 years, I've kind of defined myself with what I do. And a lot of us define ourselves by what we do,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
I said to you, when you first meet someone, the first thing they ask you is, what do you do? When they get in, they ask you, what do you do? And that usually means your job, your service, whatever it is that you provide to earn some
Yeah.
kind of income. So, and I always thought of my job as what I've done now to not really be a job because it is in my everyday life. You live and breathe. So when I'm going to transition, it's not like a total abandonment like when I was in midlife from a journalist flip. It was totally a switch, but it looks
Yeah.
more like an evolution. Maybe the formal work part, but I still embrace all these things that I teach my clients because I still practice it
Of
in my
course.
life.
Of course.
Tilted me into this so-called third quarter life, or where I've come to this fork in the road again, is what happened since 2020. How our lives has been affected since 2020, all the weird things that's going on in the world, how we've lived through it in our own individual circumstances, the choices that we've made, the challenges that we've
Yeah.
faced without going too much into our challenges. Well, for me at least, I've begun to question again, how am I going to view my perspective of the world has change again. It's like the scales,
Mm.
another layer of the scales in the eyes has been removed. So I question again how I want to live my life. And
Mm.
the overriding thing is I've decided for myself, I want to go even more back into basics and
Yeah.
back into how nature intended us
Yeah.
to live. But to go in that direction also takes a lot of effort from untangling yourself from a lot of the modern world noise. And especially we live in Singapore, it's there's not a whole lot of nature. There is some. We are grateful for whatever we have, but we live really in a very cityfied concrete life. We're surrounded by technology, right? And I appreciate everything technology has given us. Like that's how we can communicate, without being in the same room. And then this AI coming, and then we have to grapple with all these. There's a lot of debate about whether it's good or it's bad.
Whereas
Yeah.
we're losing that touch of, human interaction. because people are just so insular now. And, and Josephine, what you were saying before about people, like scaling back from all these different changes and bringing things back to its kind of natural kind of state. I know we need the assistance with technology and those sorts of things, but also I'm a big believer everything comes around in circles. So we all start to grow, but we all start to be affected by those changes. And then we just want to come back and simplify things. But sometimes we don't know what we've got and how great we've got it until we hit complications. Because the more changes I see, I'm not resistant to change. I try to absorb, the changes. But, the scary it can be sometimes, and I'm seeing less human interaction. Whereas now I'm starting to also see people are sort of really thriving for that now, because they're, tired of being, insular and lonely and having all these different, mental illnesses that are surfacing and not having, the right support that they need, to help them through.
I feel also sometimes the deep trauma will keep recurring, like within their body, if they don't seek help, right? For not just physical health, but the emotional, mental aspects. Because trauma can be, it's like a broken record, right? It just keeps replaying over and over again within the nervous system. And until
it's stuck in your body. It is stuck in your body, right?
It
I mean,
is.
if you want to talk about the spiritual part, the energy is stuck in the body, and because we are frequencies, we made out of frequencies, it affects the biological functioning of the body,
Definitely. So it can be draining, dealing with, I feel sometimes dealing with people's emotional stuff, because what is coming out is toxicity, isn't it? I mean, it's toxicity that we cannot see. You can't measure it, right? I mean, for all of us here, when we are dealing with our clients, whenever they share stuff, right, is their stuff coming out, and it's toxic energy. I mean, we're not saying that they are toxic, but what they're sharing, the burden that they've been carrying, is a different kind of poison. And if we are in that environment all the time, inevitably, by power of osmosis, we get that energy. And so, that boundaries is so, so important, right? As a practitioner, as a caregiver, as a coach, right? As a therapist, towards our clients, we have to draw the line.
Third quarter life, at the crossroads again. So that's why I've reached a point, because of since the last 4 years of what's happened. I want to do some other things in my life. I want to lead a more natural life. So then that comes, how do I give up what I do? Do I gradually step out of it? And then, of course, I reflect a lot deeply of then who am I after that, right? So, Josephine, what do you do? Then I'm not a nutritional therapist anymore. I'm not really what am I? Who am I and who am I? So I think it's an important question when people, even if you're not self-employed, if you are working in a company and you reach a point where you're forced to retire or whatever, and I think everyone needs to spend a little bit of time reflecting on the next stage of their life, what they're going to do. Because I think if you don't have some kind of meaning and purpose in your life, then I don't know what is retirement for. You must have something else
I'm sure many of our listeners, some of them who are older may also be struggling with this. And I would say that it is it's part of the evolution, right? Part of our personal evolution, and that it doesn't have to be this or that. It doesn't have to be so clearly defined as it would be when you were much younger. I think as you get older, because you have more wisdom, you have a greater capacity to see things in a broader perspective, right? Your worldview, hopefully, is also expanded. Then it is a journey of evolution. You see that, okay, I'm this, or I was this, but I'm evolving to something else. But I also have the ability to do, what I used to do, but I want to do something else along with it. And, and it's totally fine. There's no, I guess there's no right or wrong, right?
I think it depends on how you see things and what your perception is, because, I've been asked many times, oh, Lenny, you're going to keep doing this, forever. And I said, well, not forever. I'll just scale back, because
Yeah.
I enjoy what I do. But at the same token, like when Josephine was saying, coming back to that identity, when you've been doing something for so long and you stop, who are you then? What do you do?
Yeah.
And the thought of actually me not being a personal trainer anymore at this stage is frightening, because that's who I am, because that's been my life, because I
Yeah.
live and I walk my talk. It's been something that I've done for 30 years. It's
Yeah.
not something that I just put my hat on, and coach my clients and then I'm a different person at the end of the day. It is who I am. So it's kind of really trying to restructure your beliefs, your perceptions, what's important, where you're growing, what you're doing. So for me at this point, I always thought, no, I would still do it, but I would do it in a way where it's not depleting my energy. I can't, do the 50 hours plus it. Once done before. I know I can't. 25 is more manageable. When I say hours, that's coaching clients. That's just face to face. That's not behind the scenes. It's not 25 hours of working. It's 25 sessions. That's
Wow.
that's doable. But I like to break mine in, and I think probably about 8 hours. I probably do about 10 clients. And but I know that's my cutoff point, and I'll know that I'll probably just scale back, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. But the thought of not being someone or doing something, if someone asked me what do you do, I would find it really hard to say anything else but a personal trainer, because
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just I'm in that crossroads too, but I'm not there yet. I'm coming up to it. Go through that transition, just finding yourself in that process, and then eventually the pathway starts to open up. And I think that's also, somewhat, for the future as well. When you're on that verge of, do I retire? What do I do? Where am I going? So it's it just I don't know. It's just such a personal thing, that of how you perceive things as well.
Yeah. Well,
I've got some clients that can't wait.
can't wait to.
They can't wait to retire. They can't wait to do all that, because they see that they've got the time and the finances to go and do something.
Right.
Whereas all that doesn't appeal to me. As long as I've got someone to share it with, that's great. I've seen many people that have worked so hard and then come to retirement, and like what you're saying before, Josephine, it's just like, they'll either, something will happen with their health, they've lost their direction. They feel so lost because they've got no direction or focus, or routine, that they need to do something.
Yeah. Well, I do, in my mind, I do see you, Alina, as a personal trainer, but in a different way, a different form, right? Like if you scale back, and also with age, right? Then you're personal training people of a much older age as well, to not like, to run a marathon or anything, but to stay fit, to stay healthy, right? And I think our roles, or what we call ourselves, may remain the same, but the type of work we do may evolve, may be different. And
definitely.
Yeah. And
well, actually last week on the beach, because as you know, I do the gym and some of all the cardio stuff's just on the beach. But 1 week ago today, I had 3 clients, and they're all over 70. I had 2 73-year-olds and 1 72-year-old. Now, one had a bit of a hip problem, one's got shoulders, and one's just recovered from surgery. I was able to cater for all those 3, but the point was just for 30 minutes, they're out there, they're doing something to the best of their ability, and they're way further ahead than the one sitting back watching them. So I see them as such an inspiration, because they're my perfect example. You don't have to be a certain prototype.
Sometimes I get the best inspiration from my more elderly clients. I mean, I have a few clients that are in their 70s as well. I remember one time I had this guy, I can't remember, I think he was like 90 or close to 90. And he came to see me because he wanted to take care of his health. He was more interested in preventive health care at the age of 90. His blood work, I tell you, when he got his blood test results were a lot better than a lot of people I see in their 40s or 50s.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
Oh, that's great.
Unbelievable. I think from my perspective, what's more important, whatever you decide, is that you need to find something that is going to continue to excite you for the rest of your life.
Agree.
Right? uh, and you, how do you tell whether something is meaningful? It must give you a feeling that you are, it must give you that tingle when you think about it, when you want to do it, right? For me, that's the gauge. Yeah, something that excites you, I think.
Yeah, that's a good gauge. That's a good
Yeah.
gauge. And if people want to look for you, they
Oh,
can
okay.
check out
I'm
your
not good on
website,
social
which,
media in terms of where to find me, but I have a website.
okay,
It's
we'll
just
put it in.
the nutritionmentor.com is my personal website. I'm
Okay.
also on because I work out of an integrative physio clinic, so my profile is there. So that's
Okay.
iphysio.sg.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Josephine, and we hope to see you again sometime
Yeah,
in the
some other
future.
time.
Oh, that is yes. So goodbye
Yeah.
from Australia.
And this is Shamla from Singapore signing off.